I mean, one of the reasons why I got on the wrong side of him was my feelings about the press. You know, and by the way, I think I have license. I've been lit up by the press. I've been grinded by late night comedy. I actually don't care. I think it's part of the process if you're going to go into politics. And so, you know, I wrote an op-ed saying that the press is not the enemy of the people. It was in the Hill in April of 2019. He went ballistic on me. And told me I was no longer on his team, which that was fine. But the question I have for you is, why is he still, all your reporting, the most recent report today where, you know, you're writing in the New York Times today that he knows that the election wasn't rigged and he knows that he lost the election. We all know that he knows that, and yet he perpetuates this lie. Why are people still kowtowing and supporting him? Why is there no backbone leadership? Why didn't McCarthy and McConnell and others say, hey, you know what, this is absolutely wrong? And why? Is it really just his political base and his power? Is that the reason? I mean, are there no principles and there's no courage at all to stand up for this wrong-headed and illegal behavior?
Do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm? Are you a Larry David person?
I do, yes.
Okay, so there's
Larry. How could you not? I mean, yeah,
right.
I mean, remember, I'm a New Yorker. Jews and Italians see the world very similarly. So yeah,
there's an episode where he has a cast member from the show Survivor and a Holocaust survivor at a dinner. I think it might have been a Seder, and they're yelling at each other and fighting, and somebody knocks over a glass of wine and red wine. And it gets all over the tablecloth. And Larry David's mother-in-law says, somebody get a sponge. And she just sits there and says, somebody get a sponge. And he says, why don't you get a sponge? And to me, that is how so many people have approached Donald Trump, is someone else will be the person who deals with him. I don't have to, but someone will. And so in the case of McCarthy, yes, it's about the base. It's about McCarthy's own ambitions. We talked about ambition before in terms of all, you know, various officials. You talked about it for yourself. McCarthy has wanted to be House Speaker for as long as I can remember. And so he almost had it once before and lost it because of an uprising from the right. And, you know, I think that.
And also his own behavior, his own behavior caught him. He's also, he got caught on Hannity, interview explaining the diabolical nature of what they did to Hillary Clinton and things like that. I mean, look, Kevin was a friend of mine. I consider Kevin a friend. He's spoken at the SALT conference. Mm-hmm. You could see me on his donor list. I think that people like him and Stefanik, they've totally morphed themselves. They've disfigured themselves for some reason. I guess it's you really learn not to be overly cynical, but you really learn what people are about in politics when they do these things. But let's talk about you for a second, okay? Have you ever had a relationship with anybody that you've covered like the relationship that you have with Donald Trump, okay? There's antipathy in the relationship, but there's a bizarre attraction of Donald Trump to you, almost like, the New York Times, whatever it might be, to get their support or to put a charm offensive on you or the New York Times. He's calling you at all hours of the night. Ever had a relationship like that?
So I reject the term relationship because it suggests some kind of give and take. He's a figure who I cover. I have never experienced a figure I cover who is so uniquely obsessed with the press.
And I like that, by the way. I'm gonna interject for a second. I do like that because I shouldn't have said relationship.
That's okay.
I should have said interaction, because people that tell me they're friends with Donald Trump, I'm like, you're not friends with Donald Trump,
right,
okay?
Right. Donald Trump doesn't really have friends. And so number one, and number two.
Okay, let me rephrase it then. So your interactions with him, have you ever had interactions with him like this?
No, because I've never. I mean, look, he is uniquely obsessed with the New York Times, and that's what it's about with me. Just to be clear, he is obsessed with the paper to a degree that I have never seen in any official. If anybody wants to understand how he feels about the New York Times, go back and listen to an episode of the New York Times podcast, The Daily, from February 2019, where he's having this back and forth with our publisher, 𝗕cie𝗱𝗵𝗀𝗀. And 𝗕cie is literally talking about really important issues like, hey, your language is being used by despots around the globe to crack down on press freedoms. And Trump keeps saying, I think I'm entitled to a good story from my paper. And that really tells you all you need to know about how he sees things versus, how the free press sees things. And he just doesn't understand what the free press does. He has no clue. I asked him during that same meeting what he thinks our role is. And I think he said to cover things accurately and fairly, which is what that's our objective, but that's not
Right.
why we exist. And so, no, I've never experienced anything like this. And also, look, he's not the first person to get upset about my coverage, Anthony. Rudy Giuliani used to yell at us in the blue room at City Hall all the time when I was covering him as mayor. And he was less than
sport. I mean, you can't be in the NFL. I mean, this terrible tragedy that happened in the NFL, but you're in the NFL and you get a concussion. Okay, you're in the NFL. I mean, you're in politics. You're going to get concussed by the journalists. Okay, it's just the way it happens.